So about 1 year ago, I recorded the Fatal Attraction series, and it did okay numbers. But then out of nowhere, I look and I'm at 1,000 views, and 644 of it came in the past 28 days. So I'm like, time to bust out some more oldies but goodies. In saying that, my name is Dorian. This is SCM Comics. We are starting our coverage of Legion Quest with X Factor number 109. So our story starts off in Mount Sinai Hospital in Israel, where Legion is in a coma. Mystique showed up to pretty much kill Legion, and X Factor showed up to stop her. But to everybody's surprise, Legion is out of his coma. Hold up. Wait a minute. I'm not handing you a cup. I'm not putting no liquor in it. Why and how did Legion kill Destiny? You know, later on in the video, it kind of explains itself a little bit. Have you been paying attention on the retention on your videos? They're not going to wait that long. The people need to know right now why that happened. The people need to know now. The people need to know now. Okay, fine. You know what? Whatever. Get the B-roll ready. And I like how you dogged up my videos. We're going to talk about that later. Do not ask me what issue it was because I cannot remember. But Legion and Destiny had an encounter. Legion was reading Destiny's mind. He either couldn't handle or didn't want to handle all the stuff that Destiny was showing him, pretty much him in the future. And he did like a psychic blast, and that killed Destiny. And now Mystique wants to kill him. There, are you happy? So before I was really interrupted, like I said, to everybody's surprise, Legion is out of his coma, and he goes, "Hello, Mystique. I've been expecting you. She said you were coming." Now, obviously, this pissed off Mystique because he's talking about Destiny, and she goes to try to strangle him. No, I don't think he meant to do it, just with the look on his face, but he gets scared, and his powers kick in, and he pushes Mystique back with a psychic blast, but it doesn't kill her. Now, Mystique is not stupid. The only reason why she was there in the first place to kill David was because he was in a coma. Now that he's out of his coma, she realizes that he is way more powerful than she is. So now she's like, all right, it's time to get the hell out of here. So she pushes David's bomb into Forge, and then she gets by Valerie Cooper. And yes, Mystique and Valerie Cooper have a unique history. You know what? Before DC even cuts in, let's go ahead and explain this. Now, X Factor, the book we're reading right now, is what most people think about when you're talking about government-sanctioned mutants. So people just sit around thinking about government-sanctioned mutants. The minute you start making content again, I want to be all in your videos like every 10 seconds. But right now, why don't you just go jump from the Watchtower without a spacesuit, perfectly land back on Earth, and right where you need to be by the Fortress of Solitude. Hey, that's realistic. That could happen. Only in your universe, homeboy. Only in your universe. But they were not the first government-sanctioned mutant team. The first one was Freedom Force, which, for all intents and purposes, was just a brotherhood of mutants that was ran by Mystique. They were pretty much tasked to do missions for the government, and if they did enough of them, then they would be pardoned for the crimes that they committed in the past. As you can see, it didn't work out. So Wolfbane tries to stop Mystique, and she just gets ninja kicked. The Orleys are chasing after Mystique. She runs to the elevator. Elevator opens up, and it's the rest of X Factor. Do you see how cramped Strong Guy is in there? Like, how do he even fit? And somehow, some way, Havoc and Polaris were in there too. So then Mystique, who is ever resourceful, just throws a magnesium grenade and then blinds everybody. So Forge is pissed. Valerie Cooper is about to blow a gasket because they had her dead to rights, and she got away. So then Forge turns to Wolfbane and pretty much is like, all right, pick a percent. Don't do anything in here. Let her get out the building and then track her down, and we'll track you with this. Wolfbane's like, you ain't saying nothing but a word. So somehow, some way, Mystique gets an ambulance, and she's running this thing right at a crowd. She jumps out. Polaris has to do everything she can do to pretty much stop the ambulance before it runs into the crowd. So everybody in X Factor is like, wow, Mystique is blind by rage, and she'll do anything to get the Legion. But I'm like, this is kind of MO for Mystique. Like, this is what she does. Like, she is a criminal, and she is a killer. Plain and simple. So now we cut back to the hospital room. Legion is talking to his mom. She's real happy because this is one of the first times in a long time that she's actually talking to David and not one of his alternate personalities. So he's exhausted. He falls back to sleep, and then Forge starts talking to his mother. So while they're talking, Legion is having a dream, and Destiny comes in there, and she's like, hey, look, what happened wasn't entirely your fault. So you need to get over it, because it's going to be your grief. It's going to lead you to do something you really don't want to do. But Legion ain't trying to hear it. He keeps saying that I'm going to fix it. I'm going to fix it all. I'm going to make it all better. So yeah. So now we cut to the marina, where the villain Avalanche, who's in a civilian getup, is being harassed by this soldier. We'll come to find out this soldier is really Mystique. She transforms. Avalanche pretty much is starting to talk about how all the people that they lost from their team, the old Brotherhood, Evil Mutants, and Freedom Force. And Mystique's like, yeah, Destiny too, but that's okay, because we're going to avenge them. So just as soon as Mystique said those words, Valerie Cooper comes out of nowhere. So Valerie is trying to talk reason into both Avalanche and Mystique. They're not trying to hear, especially Mystique. She ain't trying to hear nothing. So then Valerie's like, all right, well, I guess I gotta deal with X Factor. So now I know his name is Avalanche, but his mutant power is to be able to move the tectonic plates. So yeah, he can cause avalanches, but he can also cause a tidal wave, which he just did. So Strong Guy punches the hell out of Avalanche. Mystique goes and knocks Valerie Cooper off the pier. Valerie Cooper hits her head, and now she's just floating in the water. Mystique noticed that, but she's like, I ain't got time to try to save her. I didn't mean to do that, but I ain't got time. I gotta get the hell out of here. So Wolfsbane goes after Mystique. Strong Guy jumps into the water to save Valerie, and then Polaris uses her power to pull them both out of the water, and then Havoc uses his power to stop the tidal wave. So back at the hospital, Legion wakes up and he seems to be okay. His mom goes to talk to Forge outside of his room. They go back into the room. Legion is gone. So Wolfbane is tracking Mystique. She gets into an alley. She thinks she has Mystique pretty much located, but she can't find her, and all of a sudden she gets butt stroked by a rifle that is being held by Mystique. So Mystique starts yelling at her, pretty much telling her, you need to stay out of my way and leave me alone. And then Wolfbane is like, you're crazy. You're not caring about anybody. You're putting civilians in danger. You're not caring whether you hurt us. Like, you don't care about life. And Mystique's like, life? I do care about life. I cared about Destiny's life, and it's been taken from me. And now I might as well go ahead and take yours. And all of a sudden, all you hear is put her down. And then it's Forge. Now, for those of you guys that learned about Forge during the Krakoan era, he seemed like a punching bag. But back in the day, back in the 90s, he was a little bit more than just a bull punching bag that can pretty much invent anything. No, he knew how to fight. He led X Factor. He was the leader of X Factor. So him and Mystique, like, they know each other's moves very well, and they pretty much get down right here. To the point to where Forge actually got the better of Mystique. But then all of a sudden, Forge is being possessed by one of Legion's very high-powered personalities. He pretty much freezes Forge in place. Mystique goes for a blaster, but it's all messed up. And then Legion uses his power to pretty much pick her up off the ground, and then goes into like a mindscape with her. So he pretty much tells her that Destiny says that she loves her. Mystique ain't trying to hear that. She's like, I'll kill you. And he's like, well, you can't do anything in the mindscape right here. Pretty much is talking in the riddles, and he's like, so yeah. But don't worry, I'm gonna fix everything. He does say that again. So he lets her out the mindscape. She falls to the ground. Force comes to. X Factor shows up. So now the whole mission changes from catcher Mystique to now trying to catcher Legion. And he uses his Omega level power, which I know wasn't a thing back then, but trust me, it's Omega level. And he just teleports X Factor somewhere else. Don't know where. So Mystique's like, why'd you do that? And Legion's like, don't worry, I'm going to fix everything. I'm going to make things better. He says that a lot throughout this whole series. So just get used to hearing that. And trust me, it only gets better from here when it comes to this series. Hindsight is a funny thing. Back when this comic book was made, there was no such thing as an Omega level mutant. Now that we're going over this comic and today's standards, there's not just one Omega level mutant. There's 3 of them on this team. I mean, this team is full of heavy hitters because the 2 that aren't Omega level mutants are still pretty powerful in their own right. Like, if Professor Xavier was Vin Rames from Pulp Fiction, he'd pretty much be saying, I'm gonna call a couple of hard pipe hitting mutants. We'll go ahead and end that with mutants. And 9 times out of 10, they will get the job done. But this is the 10th time in this book, and they're going up against Legion. So as Dan Cole would say, this fight, it's not even close. My name is Dorian. This is SCM Comics. We are continuing our coverage of Legion's Quest with Uncanny X-Men number 320. So the story starts off with Storm, and she has all kinds of lightning around her. And not trying to insult your intelligence, but if you didn't know, she is one of the Omega level mutants. Then when you turn to the next page, you see she's using that lightning and she's hitting Legion with them and is doing nothing to him. So the rest of the X-Men Gold team is Jean Grey, Omega level mutant, Bobby Drake, Iceman, Omega level mutant, Psylocke, a heavy hitter, and Bishop, another heavy hitter. And Legion is paying no attention to him whatsoever. So Iceman built like this ice fortress around him and Psylocke to try to keep them safe. Psylocke wants to go out to try to help, and Iceman's pretty much like, to do what? Say some bad words to him? We better stay in here for right now. Jean is asking Bishop to use his power to try to siphon off some of the energy that Legion's getting off, but that doesn't work. So pretty much the only thing they have left is for Storm to try to use her power, and hopefully it can stop Legion, but as we can see, it's not doing a thing to him. So Storm is thinking to herself, when we got here, we thought we could deal with Legion, but we were just fooling ourselves. And then we cut to when they first got here. So as they're getting off the plane at the Israel International Airport, you got Bobby Drake talking to Bishop. Bishop's kind of like not understanding what the hell's going on, and Bobby's like, hey, you know, we're in the Twilight Zone when the Israel National Army and the PLO are working together. Now, it's been 30 years since this comic book has come out, and the best way for me to describe that statement is like the Rebel Army in Star Wars and the Empire are working together because there's a threat that neither one of them can handle by themselves. And of course, they're mutants, so everybody hates them. 30 years later, nothing's really changed. But the reason why they're not being attacked or being told to go home is because David Haller's mother is the actual ambassador of Israel, so they gotta pretty much listen to her. So she's meeting with him and she's filling them in on what happened to X Factor. If you don't know, all you gotta do is check out Legion Quest Part 1, cards right there, links in the description. She also explains what Legion's been up to and why they were brought in, because he like built this dome-like structure that nothing can penetrate. They tried tanks, they tried fighter jets, they tried everything, and all they get back is pretty much hurt or killed soldiers. And then they talk to the guy that's like in charge of the operation, and he goes, on a scale of 1 to 10, this is like a 35. So then he's like, we're going to have to look at all options, including nuclear. So obviously David's mom takes offense to that and is like, no, you're not going to do that because this is my son. We're going to figure out a way to bring him back. And then he's also like, well, I don't know why they're here. And then Storm's like, it's okay, we're used to this. We've dealt with David the most out of anybody here, so if anybody's going to get through to him, it's us. And also David's mom is explaining how he's more powerful than he's ever been, because ever since he came out of his coma, there's no more personalities. It's just one personality and he has one single focus. So he's akin to a god, and she's not lying. But Storm's like, god or not, we need to go ahead and take care of it. So if anybody's going to get in there, it's going to be us. So then we switch back to inside the dome that David created, and Storm's like, look, you need to stop ignoring me. And David's like, oh, I can hear you. I'm not ignoring you, I'm just not listening to you. So then David's like, you know what, let me show you something. And he uses power and was like, grabs on the Storm. Storm's like, let me go. He's like, yeah, this works, you're going to be the first, so you should be excited. And then they just disappear. So the rest of the X-Men are like, what the hell is going on here? So pretty much in a nutshell, he figured out a way to use his power to be able to time travel back to the past. He takes Storm to the moment to where a fighter jet is pretty much going to crash and kill her mother. And he's like, you have a chance to change that. So the Storm starts flying as fast as she can to try to get to the fighter jet to try to redirect it. And then the moment she almost gets there, David takes her out of time. So now they're back in the present time in the spear. And Storm's like, that was a cruel illusion. And David was like, that wasn't an illusion. We were back in the past. And now that you know what I can do, I'm gonna use this power and I'm gonna change things. So the Bishop pretty much attacks him. David takes care of him. It's like, what are you doing? Like you can't beat me. You can't do anything. So why would you do this? And then Iceman's like, that wasn't really an attack. It's more of a misdirection. And Iceman and Jean, the two Omega level mutants, use their power and actually hurt Legion. So the Storm's like, all right, while he's down, everybody getting the Blackbird. We need to get the hell out of here because we can't handle what he's about to do. And so they're trying to get out of there, and David pretty much appears on a Blackbird like, where you guys think you're going? And then pretty much makes it crash. So then Jean is trying to reason with David, because Jean's always trying to reason with somebody. And in a nutshell, he doesn't directly come out and say what he's going to do, but he kind of infers, and Jean and Storm kind of put two and two together, and it's like, yeah, he's about to go back in the past to try to change something with Professor Xavier. So Legion's about to dip, and Storm realizes what he's about to do, and she's like, all right, she has to think quickly. She's like, all right, Bishop, even though he failed to absorb all of Legion's power, he absorbed some of it, and she pretty much tells Psylocke to use her size to make a connection with Bishop that now also has a connection to David, so that when David does a jump, he takes them with him. And that's what happens. The whole team goes except for Jean. She uses her mental powers to anchor herself because somebody has to let the rest of the X-Men know what just happened. So she briefly starts talking to Charles mentally, and then she does what Jean always does back then. She passes out. So now we cut to the Shi'ar Empire, and you got Queen Lilandria. I believe I pronounced it right. She's pretty much sleeping, and that's the first time she's been able to sleep peacefully since Charles took back off and went back to Earth. To all my X-Men 97 fans, you guys know what I'm talking about. So she's awakened by like this big explosion, and we see Gladiator lying on the floor. Now, why that is a big deal? Because the Gladiator is like one of the closest things to Superman in Marvel Comics. So to knock him out, that's got to be somebody really, really, really tough or really strong. And we see it's Jaeth. I think that's how I pronounce it. If I'm wrong, I'm pretty sure you guys will let me know. And he's like, look, I have an important message to give to you, and I didn't have time to get past your Watchmen. And she's like, well, what's so important that you had to knock out Gladiator and abandon your duties because you're in charge of protecting the Enchron Crystal? Now, for those of you guys that don't understand the importance of the Enchron Crystal, when this story takes place is in the 7th iteration of the universe. The 6th iteration, the bad guy there destroyed the Enchron Crystal, which pretty much destroyed the multiverse, and when everything got restarted, it restarted to where it is right now. And also too, a nice little Easter egg, Gallon was an explorer in the 6th iteration. He wound up being able to survive the blast. He combined with Eternity of the 6th iteration of the universe and became Galactus. So he pretty much tells her that, look, I left my duties for the Enchron Crystal because in a minute it won't matter because everything is about to come to an end. So we need to do something right now. This is a classic case that you could be all powerful. You don't know what you don't know. And what you don't know, mess up your plans. My name is Dorian. This is SCM Comics. We are continuing our coverage of Legion Quest with X-Men number 40. So our story starts off with Charles Xavier in a wheelchair, which normally that would be nothing new. But this is back in the past, so he's not paralyzed. And he's praising the man who constructed this wheelchair, which he feels like this is the best wheelchair he ever seen made. And the guy says, well, I have a thing with metal. So you know who this is. It's Magneto. Now, this is back when they first met each other. They only kind of known each other for a few weeks. Professor Xavier is a doctor of mental disorders, obviously. And Magneto is a volunteer orderly. Yes. He even referenced that I need to go clean some bedpans. We all gotta start somewhere. But no cap, one of the most important people in the hospital is an orderly, because who else is going to clean your bedpan? It's not you, because if you could, why the hell are you using bedpan in the first place? I got off track. Anyway, now do they know that they're both mutants? I think Magneto suspects Charles is a mutant, but he doesn't know for sure. I'm assuming Charles knows that Magneto's a mutant because Charles knows how to read minds. So, I mean, you would think he would read Magneto's mind and he's just being nice because he feels a kinship to him. I don't know. He's not acting like he knows, but this is Charles Xavier, so he probably knows. And Charles is actually leaving the hospital to go on a date with Legion's mom, Gabrielle Haller, which is extremely important to the storyline because you'll see in the end. Not in this book, but you'll see. That's extremely important. So while Charles leaves, Magneto goes to see his next patient, which is a John Doe, and it's Legion. And his hair isn't spiked up high as hell, which why isn't it? I don't know, but it's not. Like, I didn't even recognize him at first. And he gave himself amnesia when he went back in time. And that's what I'm saying. Like, you don't know what you don't know. He didn't know that, I guess, going back in time was going to give himself amnesia. And how the hell can you complete your mission if you don't even know who the hell you are? So now we cut back to present time and you got Rogue and Archangel. Yes, this is Archangel. So that means Apocalypse got his hands on him, turned his wings metal and turned them blue. And they're looking for Storm's team. And particularly, he's looking for Betsy Psylocke because, you know, they just got a relationship going, so he needs to find his boo thing. So they're having issues because they're trying to do this in a sandstorm. Now, the rest of the X-Men team are there. They're pretty much got a little headquarters set up in like a tent. Cyclops is asking Professor Xavier about Legion. You know, like, what does he know about what's going on? Professor Xavier is like, I don't really know when it comes to my son. I'm not gonna lie to you. Because you got to think about it. Legion has like probably over 100 different personalities in his head, so even for Professor Xavier to try to read his mind, it's got to be confusing, so I don't think he tries. Plus, he's not the greatest of fathers. So Archangel finds Jean in a sand dune and then brings her back to the little headquarters. So she's extremely dehydrated, extremely exhausted. They're giving her an IV, and then Beast is like, I guess it's okay for you to do like a little mental probe to try to wake her up. So that's what Professor Xavier does, and she wakes up screaming Legion. But they're asking what happened, and she's like, Legion is no longer like fragmented, whole bunch of different personalities. He's just one person, and he's even more powerful now than he was when he was fragmented. And he tapped into this new power, and he took himself and the others. Professor Xavier's like, where? And Jean's like, in the past, Charles, somewhere to your past. So we go back to said past, and we see our X-Men team, and they have amnesia. I think the only reason why they're hanging out with each other is because they woke up next to each other. Like, Bobby's sitting there, he's like, I don't know anything. Like, what the hell is this? As he holds up his X-Men symbol. So then they walk off, and then Bobby turns himself into ice, and he's like, what are we? Now, Bishop doesn't know much, but he knows enough to say, hey, maybe you shouldn't do this in public. And Psylocke knows that she can read minds, but they're back in the past, probably before they was even born. So whatever mind she reads, it's not helping. So now there's an interlude, and we go back to the mansion, and we got Sabretooth, and he's in a cage, and he's trying to figure out a way to free himself. You see, there was a point in time where Professor Xavier thought that he can help Sabretooth like he helped Wolverine. And Wolverine is steady trying to tell him that they ain't the same. Like, Wolverine killed because he had to. Sabretooth kills because he likes to. So anyway, Wolverine's there to make sure that Sabretooth doesn't do anything crazy. And yes, he has bone claws because fatal attractions already happened. If you're an X-Men 97 fan and you want to know what happened in the comic book, the link to the playlist will be in the description. And they're actually referring to you to read Wolverine number 90, which I happened to already cover on this channel a long time ago, because Wolverine number 90 to me was the best Sabretooth Wolverine fight I've ever read. So link to that video will also be in the description. So now we cut back to Haifa, which, if you guys don't know, is a city in Israel. I know when I read this comic, I didn't know what the hell Haifa was. You know, I was like, I thought it might have been a made up place or something. So you got Magneto, he's watching Charles and Gabrielle Haller leave, and he's kind of jealous. I don't think he's really jealous. I think he's lonely, you know, because he ain't been with anybody since his wife left him. His wife left him because, you know, he had to do what he had to do once his daughter died. So he starts to help Legion, and even though Legion has amnesia, he still has his powers. And he's like, I can sense like all this anger inside you. And he starts using his powers. So he looks into Magneto's past, and he sees the Nazi soldiers. He sees the concentration camps. He sees how his daughter was killed by these soldiers and how Magneto took them all out. So Magneto just starts yelling, "Stop it. What in the name of God are you? What are you doing to me? Who are you to remind me of all that I've lost? Animal." And obviously he starts using his magnetism. Anything that's metal goes flying around the room, and then he goes running out, and Legion's like, "I'm sorry, Magnus. I didn't know all what you suffered." And he's like, "Oh Lord, what's wrong with me? Why am I here?" So his amnesia is still intact. So Magneto is trying to find Charles because he don't know what the hell just happened. So you got Charles, he's on his date. He bumps into Betsy. They kind of read each other's minds. Charles kind of doesn't know what the hell's going on because obviously Betsy has amnesia, and Betsy doesn't know what the hell's going on with Charles because she has amnesia. So technically in her mind, she doesn't know Charles. So Magneto finds Charles and he's like, "That John Doe, there's something wrong with him. You need to come back and see." Charles like, "What?" He's like, "I don't know. You need to come see for yourself." So they get back to the hospital. Charles goes, "Good heavens." And Magneto's like, "I'm afraid you might be asking for assistance in the wrong direction because Legion is on fire, and through the fire you can see images of the X-Men." And in the narration bubble it says, "For once, Charles has no answers." So now we cut back to present time. You have Gabrielle, and she's asking Charles, "Who'd you call? And am I going to like the answer?" And then we see that it's Cable. Cable's like, "Hi, Pops," talking to Cyclops. And he's like, "You called Chuck and I came. I can't explain why me and Domino are here." So Charles is asking Cable, who is a resident time traveler, if they can borrow his ship to go back in time to rescue the X-Men and stop Legion. And Cable's like, "I really wish I could help you, but unfortunately, my time machine is at the bottom of the Pacific Ocean." Again, if you want to know what happened, it happened in Fatal Attractions, which the link to the playlist is already in the description. But then the Israel soldiers draw down on Cable because technically he's a wanted man because they think he's Strife. Now, if you don't know who Strife is, he is a clone of Cable, except for Strife doesn't have a techno-organic virus in him, so he has full access to his mental abilities. So he is extremely powerful, extremely. He is definitely Omega level. And he's also a really bad guy that did really bad things, and the Israel soldiers don't know the difference. But that gets put on the back burner because all of a sudden, Lilandria, which is Charles' boo thing, she's the Empress of the Shi'ar Empire, all of a sudden projects herself and tells Charles, "Hey, here's some bad things that are about to happen in your past that we need to help fix." And Charles is like, "Well, we're trying to deal with it, but why are you showing up and why is this such a big concern?" And then we see on the last page, because all of the Watchers came, well, maybe not all the Watchers, but a bunch of Watchers came to Lilandria, was like, "Hey, there's some bullshit about to go down and we need to stop it." Now, they don't really use them now, but back in the day, when the Watchers showed up, you know it was about to go down. Like, if the Watchers were scared, yeah, whatever's about to happen, it's about to be catastrophic. So Legion and our X-Men that are in the past still have amnesia, but yet and still, all the cosmic entities are still worried about what Legion's about to do, to the point that the Watchers showed up at Lilandria's door. My name is Dorian, this is SEM Comics. We are continuing our coverage of Legion's Quest with Uncanny X-Men number 321. So the story starts off 20 years in the past, where you have Charles Xavier and Eric Lyncher, Professor X and Magneto, having a drink in an Israel bar where they're discussing if Homo superiors were real. The discussion is purely hypothetical, even though they're both Homo superiors. And Professor Xavier is pretty much in his normal stance. He feels like if Homo superiors were real, that humanity would learn to accept them into their culture. And Magneto is Magneto. I'm sorry, Magneto's right. He's like, humanity doesn't accept itself. The different races, they don't get along. So now you're going to tell me that a superior race is going to come to the fold and they're just going to automatically accept them? I don't think so. So as they're talking, they're interrupted because there's this musician who has no legs and he's playing a flute to get money, obviously. And these Israel military guys, I don't know, they're soldiers or sailors, might be a mixture of both. They're disrespecting the guy by pouring beer on his head. So surprisingly, it's not Magneto that wants to fight first. it's Professor Xavier. And Magneto is actually trying to talk him out of doing anything. But Professor Xavier, he ain't hearing it. He walks over to this big dude, grabs him by a pressure point, puts him down, takes his money, and gives it to the guy with no legs. So now his buddies try to get involved. One dude has a chair. He's coming from behind on Professor Xavier, and Professor Xavier blocks it. They're like, is he reading our minds? Yes, that's exactly what's happening. So now the rest of the bar looks like they're about ready to fight Professor Xavier. And now Magneto's like, I gotta get involved. So Magneto steps in between this big dude and Professor Xavier. Magneto's like, you don't want to do this. Big dude punches Magneto in the nose, and Magneto's like, all right, I guess you do. And then Magneto starts putting it on this dude. So these two are beating up the bar. Magneto's like, how many bar fights have you gotten us into? And Professor Xavier's like, one. There's only one. So the bar is beat up. Magneto and Professor Xavier walking out. Professor Xavier was like, just remember, Magneto, a dream is worth fighting for. And Magneto's like, I'll be sure to put that on your tombstone. So you guys are probably thinking that's what's happening in the past right now, but really it wasn't. Professor Xavier is telling the story to Cable, as the Shi'ar Empire are working with the X-Men to try to build a machine so that Cable to go back in time to try to help out the X-Men that are there. So they get the machine complete, and then Beast does a countdown, 2, 1, now. And he goes, nothing's happening. One of the Shi'ar scientists is like, patience, Earth staff. He's like, but, and all of a sudden there's a big room. And then he says, oh, my stars and gardeners. Beast used to say that back in the day all the time. You X-Men 97 fans like, what are you talking about? He says that right now. So now we go back 20 years in the past, where our wayward X-Men are still suffering from amnesia. Bishop and Iceman are working in docks. The dock manager pretty much says lunch in Hebrew. Iceman's like, what? Bishop's like, he said lunchtime. If you're going to work here, you should really learn the language. So they break off and they meet up with Storm and Psylocke. So while they've been working, Bessie's been working with Storm to see if she can unlock anything in her head. They ask for an update. Storm's like, nothing yet. Bishop gets pissed and be like, well, what's taking so long? And then Bessie gets mad, like, you know what, I could send this psychic blade right through you instead. So Storm breaks up the situation and pretty much like, look, eventually we're gonna figure this out. And Bishop, he's just pissed off. He's like, oh well, go ahead and keep the faith, or somebody has to, and he just storms off. So now we cut to Charles and Magneto in the past, and they're talking about Gabby. And Professor Xavier's like, I wonder, should I even be doing this? You know, I just got here, kind of just met her. You know, can't really say I love her just yet. And Magneto's like, look, dude, you got a good thing going on. Don't waste it. Just go ahead and tell her how you feel. So then we cut back to the hospital, where Gabrielle is sitting, I guess, waiting on Professor Xavier, where we see Legion. He's at the hospital. Well, he's always been in the hospital. And from the looks of it now, seems like he has his memories back. But when she looks, it's Professor Xavier. And he's all talking to her and trying to make her like feel easy. And then he starts coming on to her. Oh, I'm thinking to myself like, dude, this is your mother. This is some incest. Why are they doing this in this comic book? Like, come on, man. So then we cut back to the docks, where Bishop is still working. He walks right by Professor Xavier and Magneto. Professor Xavier kind of falls over because he gets some kind of psychic premonition. Then he's like, oh, we need to get back to the hospital. It's Gabby. And they start running. So then the Bishop is by himself, like loading something up. All of a sudden, this pink lightning comes down. He gets ready, and then we see it's Cable. So Cable's trying to talk to Bishop. He's wondering why Bishop doesn't recognize him. Then he thinks to himself like, time travel, there's some kind of anomaly. Anyway, he understands why he lost his memory. But as soon as he goes to help, the other X-Men show up and Iceman freezes Cable in place. So somehow Cable gets out of the ice. He goes to Bishop. They're still trying to stop him. Bishop's like, no, this dude's familiar to me. I think he's here to help. Cable starts using his mental powers to start jogging Bishop's memory, and in return, by using Bishop, I guess his power goes to all the other X-Men, and he starts to jog their memory too. So on the last page, we see Professor Xavier and Magneto get to the hospital. Gabby's on the ground. They pick her up, and then she's like, oh, it's you. It's really you this time. And they're like, well, what's going on? They turn around, and they see his Legion. Like I said, he got his memories back, and he lays out his grand plan. He went back in time so that he can kill Magneto back in the day, so that his dad doesn't have to spend the next 20 years trying to stop Magneto, and maybe he can spend more time being a father. That's his plan. It's a bad plan. It's not going to work, but that's his plan. Now, 14-year-old me remembers reading this next book that's about to come up. Fatal Attractions made my head spin. The very next thing made my head spin was this series, because what this leads into, whew, man, it was crazy. So I gotta say, just buckle up your seatbelts for the next episode, for the next issue. So Fatal Attractions messed up my little young head. That's why that was one of the first Marvel series that I covered, because it had a profound impact on me. Now, when it comes to Legion Quest, I didn't even read all of Legion Quest. Like, the stories that I covered, some of them I read for the first time when I started covering it. And all of like the spinoffs, like X Factor spinoff and Wolverine spinoff, like those called to me and I was reading it. And I was wondering why the hell they were ending the way they were ending. I didn't understand. And then I saw this cover and I was like, what in the hell's going on? Why is Magneto holding Professor Xavier? Why does Professor Xavier look dead? I thought Magneto was a vegetable. Like, I had questions, so I picked it up and I read this book and oh man, it was crazy. My name is Dorian. This is SEM Comics. We are continuing our covers of Legion Quest with X-Men number 41. So the story starts off 20 years in the past in Israel, and our X-Men team that went back in time, which consists of Storm, Psylocke, Bishop, and Iceman, just got their memories back. And Storm's like, this can't be happening, as they're all looking up and they see Legion fighting Magneto. So Bishop's like, Storm, I hate to ask this, but I don't remember Professor Xavier telling us the story. And she goes, oh, you mean the story where he finds out about Magneto's powers because he's fighting his son in the past? He goes, yeah. And Psylocke's like, well, I'll try to locate this error's Professor Xavier to see if we can try to explain what's going on. And she can't locate him. So now they're wondering what happened to him. So then they go back to the hospital and Gabrielle is trying to help up Charles, you know, because Legion and Magneto has been wrecking shop. And Charles is trying to understand what the hell's going on. Gabrielle's like, I don't understand what's going on either, because he said that I'm his mother, and like, how's that my son? Like, he's almost my age. Like, I don't understand what the hell's going on. As they're looking up and they still see Magneto and Legion fighting. So finally Psylocke locates the professor. He's like, yeah, I can hear you. I apologize. This is only the second time I've talked to somebody telepathically who is like me. So Gabrielle's puzzled. She's like, who are you talking to? And Professor Xavier is like, I better make the decision now. So he goes to her and he puts her to sleep with her mind. It's like, it's best you not even see what the hell's about to happen. So Charles is like, who are you? And he just starts to be like amazed. He's like an Asian telepath that has a British accent, a giant of a man that's absorbing kinetic energy, another man who is liquid ice who's freezing the very air around us. Like, he was just shocked, amazed, and also kind of proud because he sees his kind and they're in like full effect. So then Storm comes down and he's like, I've met you before. It's like, I've read your mind before. But this is impossible because you're a grown woman, and the last time I saw you, you were a kid, and it wasn't that long ago. So then we cut to the present, and you got Charles talking to a holographic image of Lilandra, and she's explaining how the Mcron crystal is pretty much, there's like this crystallizing storm that's going around and is taking out like star systems, and it's headed this way. And Professor Xavier still is like puzzled, like, how in the hell do events happen in the past that is causing this? And then he's also hurt because pretty much the world's coming to an end and he wants to be with her and he can't. So then you got Rogue and Gambit. They're looking on the situation. They're feeling sad for Charles, and we're also kind of happy because at least they're together when all this is going down. And then you see Archangel. He's flying around. He wants to be with Betty, but unfortunately she's in the past. So then he does the next best thing and he flies to Scott and Jean and asks them if he can be with them. And they're like, oh, of course, because what you're seeing right here is 3 of the original X-Men. So we go back to the past where obviously this is breaking news, so everybody's covering it and they're broadcasting around the world. So the news anchor is like, we haven't seen superpower individuals fight since the 6-Day War. You're gonna have to do your research on that one, but I guess there was such a thing called the 6-Day War where Israel fought, I think it was Egypt, Jordan, and Syria. And I guess they wrote a comic book about it that had like individuals with superpowers involved. I don't know where that book is at. I don't even know where to begin to look for it, but it happened, I guess. So then we cut to Apocalypse. Yes, Apocalypse. And he's like, my geneticist, talking about Mr. Sinister, was wrong. He predicted that this would happen, but it's happening a lot sooner than what he thought it would. He's talking about his time to pretty much rule the age of Apocalypse, which we will cover next. After this, we might take a little bit of break, but we're definitely going to cover Age of Apocalypse. The whole reason why we cover Legion Quest is to go into Age of Apocalypse, because this is what this leads to. So then we cut back to Magneto and Legion, and Legion's pretty much like, you're the reason why my father couldn't be a good dad and he couldn't do the things he do. You guys started off as friends, but your ideology pretty much made it to the point where he had to spend all of his time fighting you, and he couldn't do things like be a father to me. So Magneto's like, what are you talking about, and why do you keep calling me Magneto? Because he hasn't given himself that name yet. So Legion's like, you're good with your powers, but you're still learning them. Like, you can't defeat me. Because and Legion did this on purpose. Let's see, he went back in time. Like, even if Magneto wasn't a vegetable right now, if he was like normal, he wouldn't have even stepped up to Magneto, because Magneto 20 years later, that's a whole different Magneto. That's a whole different problem. And I know Legion is a Omega level mutant, but so is Magneto. So then Legion pretty much got Magneto wrapped up in something, and Magneto's like, you keep talking about like this promise of a dream, like, I don't even know who your father is. And Legion starts talking. He's like, hold on, time out. That sounds like, but that's impossible. And Legion goes, Charles Xavier, and then Charles hears him say it. So Magneto looks like he's about to pass out. Storm goes in the air and catches Magneto, and then she goes to Iceman, goes, Bobby, you gotta do something. So Bobby's like, I don't know if I can even do anything to this guy, but I guess I could try. So he goes next to Legion. Legion's like, oh, honey, I forgot you guys were even here. Come on, help me, Bobby. Let's go ahead and take down Magneto. And he's like, are you serious? Like, no, I'm not here to help you with Magneto. I'm here to stop you. And somehow, some way, he freezes Legion, like completely freezes Legion, like turns him into ice. Because this whole battlefield is littered with Omega level mutants. Storm is one, Iceman's one, Legion's one, Magneto's one. I mean, there's a lot of them. So the Iceman brings him down. He should let him drop, but he didn't. So now it seems like the battle's over. The X-Men won. Professor Xavier is still trying to wrap his head around exactly what's going on and how this is his son. So Psylocke can feel Legion, and she goes, it's not over. Everybody get back. And she goes to try to punch Legion, but he uses his mental powers and pretty much takes everybody down, melts himself, grabs Magneto, and is like, this is far from over. So again, Legion's like a broken record. He's pretty much, oh, this is your fault, Magneto, and so on and so forth, and I didn't have a childhood because of you, and so on and so forth. And then Magneto's like, well, how do you know that the things that you're doing right now isn't changing the person that I will become? So Legion kind of thinks about it for a second. He goes, I wish I can take that chance, but I cannot. And he grabs Magneto and he loads up his fist because he's about to hit him with like this psychic blast, almost the same thing that Psylocke does. So then Charles Xavier gets up, he calls out for Legion, and Legion is obviously not listening. Professor Xavier's like, this is wrong. I can't use my powers, because Legion scrambled his brain, so he does the only thing he can do. He runs in front and he takes the blast directly in the head that was meant for Magneto. So the Legion's like, what, father, daddy, this is impossible. You can't be dead, because if you're dead, that means, that's right, he was never born and he's gone. And so are the other X-Men, Storm, Psylocke, Iceman. The only one that stayed put was Bishop, because he's out of time. Now, how's that even work? I have no idea, and please don't ask me how this works. Because technically you would think like, no Professor Xavier, no Bishop timeline, but technically he's not there no more, and I don't know how it works, but he's still there. So the Magneto's like, Charles, you died to save me. Oh God, Charles. And then we start doing the rounds. I think we see a vegetized Magneto that's sitting on the throne, because, you know, Charles Xavier shut down his mind and fatal attractions. Well, Exodus, he might be a lot of bad things, but he is loyal to the fault, even to a vegetable. But it doesn't matter because everybody is turned to crystal. They were on like Avalon or Asteroid M. We go to Earth. We see Scott, Jean, and Angel. They can see the storm coming. Rogue and Gambit see it too, and then they just kiss each other real quick as everybody is turned to crystal. Now, like I said, you see the whole Wolverine Sabretooth, where Wolverine and Sabretooth are fighting. I'll have a link to the description of that because we cover that. Now, I also remember X Factor and seeing Strong Guy. Whole reason why I even got that comic book is because he was fighting and he's like Bishop. He kind of absorbs kinetic energy, but he absorbs it and he just gets bigger. Well, he got to the point where he absorbed too much energy and his heart couldn't take it, and he started to have a heart attack, and he's so big they couldn't give him CPR because of his muscles. Like it was crazy. I didn't want to know what happened, but Age of Apocalypse happened, so I didn't find out what the hell happened right away. Anyway, Age of Apocalypse is pretty much just about to happen, but you would think this series would end right here. It is not, because we got another man that's out of time, and that's Cable. So we got one more book to cover in Legion's Quest. We'll cover Cable, and then we'll get into Age of Apocalypse.